Namaskar, greetings, and gratitude. I bring to you another inspirational Star Talks episode number 84. And today, with me on the hot seat is Miss Sandhya Pillai. How are you, Miss Sandhya?
I'm doing great, Preeti. Congratulations on your 84th episode. That's a huge feat actually for you to be completing that many number of episodes. So big round of applause. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on your show.
Thank you so much. Miss Sandhya Pillai is an accomplished executive coach, founder of Sandhya Coaching with 25 years of industry experience, including 13 years in leadership and communication coaching. A passionate facilitator, thought leader, and keynote speaker, specializing in designing leadership programs, mentoring women entrepreneurs, and coaching aspiring coaches and trainers. That is so nice, Sandhya.
Thank you.
What inspired you to become an executive coach? And how has your approach evolved over the years?
Brilliant question, Preeti. I think the inspiration normally comes for most people from, kind of experiences that we have in our life, right? So for me, that inspiration came from meeting a leader who almost was, living the philosophy of walk the talk. She had a masterful way of communicating with people, and she was also somebody who could easily inspire, influence, and impact people. And while she had that, and while I was a reportee under her, I realized that sometimes these leaders, most of them, right, I would meet them as visionaries or strategists, they would lack that aha moment or create that aha moment when they would, address us. And that made me feel that people at the top maybe would need some strategies or something that misses out when they're reaching that level. So actually, my first coaching was an accident. It was something that was offered to me on the plate by my mentor, saying that you are somebody who should try coaching. So I did that, but then there has never been a looking back from there.
Great. Congratulations to you on
Thank
this.
you.
Wonderful. What are the most challenges you've seen executives face, and how have these changed over the years?
Some of the topmost, Preeti, is very, when it comes to communication, we all know it's public speaking and presentations, right? That's something which is common. And I guess while I started around 13 years ago, those were primarily the topmost, right? People would come to me with presentations or public speaking or keynote speeches. But what has evolved over the years is one biggest thing is leading when change happens, or when there is a crisis, or when there's a disaster, or when there's a huge economic shift or a big transformational shift like we had COVID. Such changes and such crises is where people normally see leadership not showing up in terms of the way they communicate and the emotional connect. So emotional connect is something that we're missing. A global stakeholder management, when I say management, it is not only just the strategy part of it, but also a lot to do with how they're communicating globally and being culturally aware. That's the biggest hit that we see here. And also this whole feedback loop uh, is not as active as it used to be earlier. So the way the feedback is given today also is something that we are hearing as a lot of challenges within the corporates, where we hear the feedback loop is not with the sense of empathy, with the sense of improvement. It comes from the more from the perspective of just being a performance review. So these are some of the things that we're hearing a lot these days in communication.
Yes, you are right. Absolutely right. Yes, correct. What new skills or mindsets do you believe are most critical for today's leaders compared to when you started your coaching?
I guess one thing, like I said for the previous question, right? One thing which is difficult for them is to handle crisis. So much so that I say that the empathy is lacking. But a lot of leaders are making a conscious effort of being a compassionate leader, or connecting with the audience. But in spite of that, when there is crisis, that emotional regulation is not great. With the kind of stress that they are handling, it's very difficult for them to handle hybrid work environments, right? Though we all loved COVID and we feel that we got a lot of freedom, but people who still handle teams working in hybrid models or even global hybrid models, it becomes very difficult for them to have employee engagement activities, ensure that the employee is equally involved in the day-to-day activities. When I say involved, it's not like they're not performing, but also the fact that that feeling of camaraderie, or the feeling that they're part of a team, that inclusiveness is very difficult for leaders to get in. So some of the new things that we are noticing and hearing a lot is one that how do we ensure that while we have empathy and compassion, how do we ensure that we are able to connect to hybrid teams, because most of the times when they're hybrid, their communication is hardly there, right, on a video call or an interaction. And when it comes to global teams, it becomes all the more challenging, because then you have to look at the cultural nuances of their communication and be very mindful of that. The third is when it comes to crisis, or any big change, like even we recently heard that Microsoft had 9,000 employees who were thrown out. So such kind of crisis communication becomes very difficult for leaders, because it's not they are not the people who are making the decision. It's coming from top down, and for them to pass it on to people becomes very difficult. These are some of the things that I hear of.
Rightly said. Yes. How do you help leaders navigate uncertainty and rapid change?
That's a tough one. I think what we're using for for the last couple of years has been, I would say, pretty more or less we've been using similar tools, but some changes that we have brought in the tools. One is that we use NLP a lot. NLP is neuro linguistic programming. If the audience doesn't know about it, so neuro linguistic programming helps people reframe and look at different ways people handle information, right? Or how are they taking information from outside? So we really help them break it down into chunks where they can process the information better, which means if they are in a complex environment, how do you simplify that events that they are taking, so that helps them actually reduce the stress. The second is also to look at how can they use positive psychology and look at some of the patterns that's emerging for them, and break those patterns. Sometimes it's self sabotage at the best, and we want to really ensure that we nip it from the bud, and we kind of ensure that people don't have those cognitive patterns. So some of the patterns that we observe is, I'm not good enough, I don't know how people will respond to me. So we try to work on these certain tools that we're using with the leaders, to ensure that they're able to manage their communication better, and also specifically when it comes to this fast track communication, also to make them aware of some of the digital ways of looking at communication and making it more relevant and using it all the more often.
Nice, nice. Yes, I keep on reading. People are talking a lot about NLP.
Yeah.
Great. Something similar. What frameworks or tools have stood the best of time in your coaching practice? Do you have something more to add to it?
Oh, yes. So we have a very, very strong framework, specifically when it comes to NLP. There is, of course, a framework that we follow, and it's not NLP, but we have a framework which we call a 3A signature framework, where we focused on authority, audience connection, and authenticity. But all three comes from certain frameworks or psychological tools that we're using. One being the strongest, which is REBT, and people who do not know, it's rational emotive cognitive therapy. And that basically helps us identify some of the cognitive patterns that are unproductive for a leader. And those patterns also make the way they communicate with their teams or their peers differently. And we identify those patterns and help them reframe it. And we use those typical ABC method of REBT. Positive psychology is one that I spoke about. Neuro linguistic is pretty much the foundation of everything that we've been doing for the last 13 years. And I guess I would say I'm a bit more biased towards NLP, and I love using NLP a lot more. So constant improvisation of NLP tools, and also passing on those tools to leaders so that they can start using that on a regular basis, which helps them actually manage other, problems or the limiting beliefs or barriers that they face. So other than that, other than REBT, we use that. We use EQ a lot these days. Like I said, we're seeing emotional regulation being one of the issues. The responses are more reactive rather than having a calm response because people are working in stressed environment. So we use EQ a lot so that the response to the emotional information that is coming to them during crisis, they're handling it better, and they identify that there is a trigger that's happening. So we help them identify the trigger and work around those triggers as well. So yeah, pretty much these are four tools that we're using.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, my last question to you: what do you see as the biggest barrier to executive growth, and how do you help clients overcome it?
That Yeah, I think it would need a book almost for me to write that. But yeah, to shorten it or maybe brief, one important thing that I've seen across in the last 13 years is CXOs or the directors or the vice presidents, the C suite or the D suite at top, they're mostly lonely. And they need a sounding board at that level where they can kind of run past their scripts with us, or we could be the trusted advisors for them, or a communication strategist. They don't really bother if we are a coach, advisor, or strategist for them. They need someone where they can run past these ideas that is coming to them. They want to check if their keynote speeches are apt, right? Will it connect to people? Will people feel connected to the kind of script that they have? How can they have storytelling as a format? These are some of the things that they have, and they need a sounding board. So I feel because that lonely at the top syndrome is high, and it's actually not getting lesser, it is actually increasing as and when we see people are moving into different roles. The that syndrome is pretty much there, and it's that's something that we observe, see a lot in the C-suite leaders. The other thing that I notice is certain things where I see that C-suite or the D-suite leaders specifically have this focus on logic and underplay on emotions, right? Because a lot of people feel that having that directorial style of communication where we focus on results, we focus on outcomes, and we focus on logic and reasoning helps, but it doesn't, because there are a lot of people who actually are working on emotions, right? The way they get influenced is emotion. And if you're not using that, so sometimes I think the CXOs are using a lot of logic and less underplaying on the emotions. And that's something that we are working, like I said, using EQ a lot for them to be able to balance that and connect with people on the emotional level as well. That's one thing that we notice. The third is growth mindset, though I'm sure all of them go through these trainings on growth mindset, but when it comes to communication, in spite of having a feedback since their early years till the top time they reach senior managers, they have constantly been given a feedback on communication. But it's only when they reach that top do they reach out to coaches and advisors like us, right? So I always feel if they start early and identify the feedbacks that they're receiving, and not kind of sideline communication, because communication seems to be the most basic skill for most people, but only when they reach the top and they have to deal with global stakeholders is when they realize that, oh, I guess I should have actually worked on my communication while I grew up in that career ladder, right? So I feel you shouldn't really wait, take the feedback, seriously when it comes to communication, invest in a coach, and start working on the bad patterns and the behaviors, because leadership behavior is very, very critical these days. People are emotionally getting triggered with even the smallest response, right? And if a leader is not equipped with EQ tools, they will not be able to handle such emotional responses or reactions actually coming from the team. So that's one thing that I'm noticing. And like I said, we use a lot of EQ and positive psychology for them to be able to work. There are other tools that we also use, which are life coaching tools. Not that I'm a life coach, but we use it so that they are able to create a balance in their personal and professional life and bring the communication, holistically change it, because it can't be that standalone they work on professional and their personal relationships are at stake. So they have to work holistically on the communication and look at how they are doing it. The most important, Preeti, is people are not really aware of their own communication style, and they really do not do that blind spot check to see, is there a problem with my communication? Why is my team not listening to me? Or why is the team not productive the way they should be? Because we don't really deep dive into what is wrong with me. Most leaders don't do that unless they're really given a feedback from the global stakeholders. They don't really do the deep dive. So we really encourage leaders to do the deep dive, be it any test, be it any assessment. I don't really preach about or tell them that this is the assessment, but do something for you to know what is your communication style. Why is it not hitting the chord or not connecting with people? Why are people not feeling or resonating with what you're saying? So those are some of the things that I feel topmost, which we are feeling right now. And I'm using the word feeling because feeling driven communication is the need of the hour. We really need to use a lot more heart in the communication and move away from the head. We have been that for a very long time. So I would say move more towards just information and sharing, having a very, very clear emotional connection with people, using authenticity, using storytelling to connect with people, and use logic, but simplify the logic for people, for a layman to understand. So I guess these are some of the things.
Wonderful, wonderful insights. Can you share any success story of yours?
Sorry, repeat the question, Preeti. I missed what you said.
Can you share any success story of yours?
Success? Oh, yes. I can share one of the recent success stories. We were working with one of the leaders in Germany, and what we've noticed, in fact, I would say the leader came to us saying that, these are some of the things that I noticed, which is one topmost, that when I'm interacting, I feel I am more logic driven, and I don't know how to bring in emotion into my communication. That's not something I can do because I've always spoken numbers and I'm very good at it. And this is the feedback we got from the leader as well, so who they were reporting to. So the CHRO told us that this person is an exceptional employee. When it comes to productivity, he is the highest in terms of productivity. We really do not have a problem, but when it comes to connecting with people, it's not something that just happening with him. And that's a constant feedback has been given for the last 5 years. But now, because he has a larger team to manage, he needs to have that connection with team members, right? Because he will definitely need to pass on that calmness, that connection, that emotion down to the team, because the team really felt disconnected with him, though they were really inspired and they'll do everything for him, but that connection, that resonance was missing. So we really worked on that, the storytelling format, the barriers where it came from, a lot around how this person was in the kind of social environment this person was raised in was impacting the way he was thinking. The economic conditions of his household when he started working was the other reason why his communication was limited to what is necessary and not anything more, right? So these are some of the things that we noticed, and we worked a lot on his barriers. We worked on the patterns that we observed, and that's how we started. That's one of the success stories. We're happy to see him using stories now, and a team also giving a feedback that they finally see beyond the person or the leader now.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for sharing these insights, Sandhya. Thank you for coming to the Star Talks today. Thank you. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Preeti. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, my dear audience, for being with us in this lovely chat today. And I am really impressed with my executive coach today. Looking forward for another personality who has inspired my life. See you, Sandhya. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.